Senator Dunnavant, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Many years ago, I was driving my kids to school in carpool, and I was late, which may not surprise any of you. And I got a ticket. I'm a little embarrassed to tell you guys that, but I did. And I had an officer walk up to my car and ask me for all the documents that he needed. And as you all know, I am a military brat, and I have an enormous amount of respect for a uniform. Always have and always will. And as that officer asked me, knowing fully that I was responsible for the error in breaking the law, I complied with everything he asked. I said, yes, sir, as I do to many of you, and I always did to my father and my family. And when he brought back the ticket to my window, and this was a young African-American police officer, when he brought the ticket back to my window, he said, ma'am, the neighbors called us and asked us to put a speed trap in this neighborhood, and I'm going to have to give you a ticket because of that circumstance. But if it were within my power, I would not give you this ticket because you have been so polite to me. I was floored. I was heartbroken, and when my window closed, I stopped and I said to my children how important that was. And this was an opportunity for them to learn that when people serve us and when they wear a uniform, they deserve our respect. They're not perfect. They're bad police officers like they're bad doctors, but the uniform commands respect. Many of you know I have a brother that was a law enforcement officer for 11 years. I have a nephew now. I talk to law enforcement quite frequently. I will point out, as we debate this bill, the arguments I hear often stray far from the subject matter of the bill. And I would agree with the senator from James City County that there are some merits in the bill, but it's not quite as it's been described to us today. But I will tell you that in the time that my brother was a police officer, which was only 11 years, he was injured so many times in his practice of law enforcement that I can't even tell you how many. I know he went to the emergency room 11 times, and he knew all the emergency room nurses by name. And he had serious injuries. And I think as we debate this, we need to understand, yes, with any law, there are times that any inappropriate things are brought forward, like the mild cases that have been mentioned here today, but those laws are needed for the very serious cases which continue to happen. And I will point out, when we say so much discretion is needed by judge and juries, well, we have discretion in our Commonwealth attorneys. And Commonwealth attorneys can decide if they actually if they actually proceed with the prosecution or not. When we want to talk about developmental delay or other needs, and I don't have the bill in front of me now, my computer's gone out, but if you look at that paragraph very carefully, it says or. And it says a slight infraction. Well, what the heck is that? Who's to say that's subjective? That is not a defined entity. It says it has several other issues in that particular paragraph that are subject to interpretation, and that interpretation may vary greatly from person to person. And it is that gray uncertainty that makes it important that we are certain with the bills and the law that we have, and that we protect people who serve us in law enforcement in a uniform, allowing discretion of whether or not it's inappropriate where it belongs with a Commonwealth attorney. I will point out, too, there's legislation that has come before this body to actually target specifically the issues of developmental challenges in law enforcement, and I've carried it myself, and it has failed. And we have sought to make sure that there is screening of developmental delays. That is how you address that issue, not a bill that has to do with the police. I will point out also that I think as we have conversations, we need to have a high level of mutual respect. I assure you, I am in close conversation, not only with my family that are in law enforcement about the bills we're looking at, but at the law enforcement officers in my district. And all the bills before us now concern them. This bill does not aspire to accomplish what we've heard. It is not going to correct the injustice of unequal implementation of law. There are bills that we can pass that will do that, and there is work to be done, but this needs to be an authentic conversation. When I hear this talk about media, and we're inciting the media, I'll point out, my friends on the other side of the aisle, they rarely publish what we say. They often publish what you say, so we're not getting a big crackerjack media event here. We're simply stating the truth. And the truth is that at this moment in time, this bill is too obscure. It undermines the certainty that our law enforcement officers deserve. It does not accomplish the goals that we have been asked to accomplish in criminal justice reform. And as such, it is a pretty big insult to our law enforcement community when they're doing what they're doing. I propose that we do not pass this bill today. It is better entertained in session 2021. Thank you, Mr. President.